What crime was a respected judge forced to confess to the Pope? Not as a sin, but as a future act. What decision did this judge threatened through his family make about an innocent man? The only person who knew the truth was now Pope Leo, but the sacred seal of confession forbade him from telling anyone what he knew. The Pope now had to prevent an injustice without leaking a single word of the truth. This is the story of a clash between one man's conscience and a pope's sacred vows, a story where silence became a battlefield. If you are curious about the outcome of this difficult task on the Pope's path, be sure to subscribe to our channel. It all began on that stormy Tuesday night. While the Vatican was preparing for the upcoming Easter ceremonies, one of Rome's most respected high court judges, Matteo Rossi, slipped into the basilica unnoticed. He was a man known in front of the cameras for his firm and fair rulings. But that night, as he knelt behind the wooden screen of the confessional, his voice was as fragile as a child's.
"Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
Judge Rossi whispered, his voice trembling.
"No, not yet, but I will."
On the other side of the screen, Pope Leo listened in silence. This strange beginning immediately put him on high alert. The judge continued. His story, like a serpent, slithered out from the dark cracks beneath Rome's polished surface. One of the city's most powerful and ruthless businessmen, Silvio Rizzi, wanted to demolish a historic neighborhood to build a luxury hotel complex. But there was a single obstacle in his way, a community leader known for his integrity, a man named Leo Falcone, who had organized the residents in protest. When Rizzi couldn't defeat Falcone legally, he resorted to the path he knew best: conspiracy. With fabricated evidence, false witnesses, and a smear campaign in the media, Leo Falcone was arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud. The case had been assigned to Judge Matteo Rossi.
"The evidence, it's so perfect. Everything points to Falcone's guilt. But I know, Your Holiness, I feel it. The man is innocent. Rizzi framed him."
"Then you must do what justice demands, Matteo.
The Pope said.
You must bring the truth to light."
Judge Rossi gave a bitter laugh.
"I can't."
He wailed.
"Rizzi, he came to my home. He showed me pictures of my daughter, Sophia. She's 12. He told me he knows her school, her piano lessons, her every move. If I don't sentence Falcone to the maximum penalty, life in prison, he said I can't even imagine what will happen to Sophia."
A silence, heavier than the air inside the confessional, descended. Pope Leo's mind went cold. This was not a simple moral dilemma. This was hell itself. On one side, the life of an innocent man. On the other, the life of an innocent child. And in the middle, a judge with a shattered conscience.
"The verdict is in 3 days, and I have no choice but to convict Falcone. God forgive me. I came here tonight because someone needed to know this terrible truth. At least one person in the world had to know that Leo Falcone is innocent, and what kind of a monster I've become."
The judge received his blessing and disappeared like a shadow into the night. Pope Leo remained in the confessional alone. But he was no longer alone. On his shoulders now lay a secret heavier than the weight of a kingdom. The Holy Seal of Confession commands a priest to take what he hears to the grave, no matter the cost. This vow was a cornerstone of the Church. To break it would be to tear down everything. But to remain silent would be to condemn an innocent man to a life of darkness. For the first time in his life, Pope Leo felt completely and utterly trapped. His hands were tied, his tongue was sealed. He was a prisoner in a jail of conscience. The next morning, the exhaustion on the Pope's face did not escape the notice of his advisor, Cardinal Francesco.
"Your Holiness, are you all right? You look as if you haven't slept all night,"
he said.
"I am merely contemplating the weight of the world, Francesco."
The Pope replied, not looking up from the documents before him. But his mind wasn't on the documents. It was back in that silent confessional, with the desperate whispers of a father. As the hours passed, the Pope's helplessness gave way to a cold resolve. If he could not speak, he would have to find other ways. If he could not intervene with his hands, he would have to move the hands of others. His mind journeyed back years ago, to his missionary days in Peru. There, among the indigenous people of the Andes, he had learned to communicate without words. Sometimes a look, sometimes a gifted stone, sometimes a told fable could be more powerful than the strongest command. Silence had a language of its own, and the Pope decided to speak it. His first move was for Judge Rossi. He had to let him know that he shouldn't lose hope, that he wasn't alone. That afternoon, a small anonymous package was delivered by Vatican Post to Judge Rossi's office. Inside, there was no note, no letter. There was only a small hand-carved wooden scale of justice, made by the indigenous people of Peru. The scale was perfect, except for one detail. One of the pans was ever so slightly, almost imperceptibly heavier than the other. It was a silent message. Justice must sometimes be balanced by our own hand. His second move was more complex. To stop Silvio Rizzi, he needed proof. But how? That evening, the Pope went to pray in one of the Vatican's oldest and least visited chapels, the Chapel of St. Joseph the Worker. This was not a random choice. The Pope knew that one of Italy's most legendary and now retired Carabinieri generals, Antonio Gallo, prayed in this chapel every evening for the soul of his late wife. General Gallo had long been suspicious of Silvio Rizzi's corrupt activities, but was waiting for a concrete lead, a spark to pursue him. That evening, as General Gallo was praying as usual, he saw the Pope kneeling in a corner of the same chapel. After some time, the Pope began to recite a rhyming prayer, as if murmuring to himself, but just loud enough for the general to hear. It wasn't a Latin hymn, it was a simple, sorrowful plea.
Redeem the one who's lost in shadows deep and wide. Illuminate the truth the wicked try to hide. Zealous nets of lies, so skillfully they weave. Zealous are the hearts that constantly deceive. Intercede, O Lord, for those who still believe.
General Gallo froze. Was this a prayer or a message? He put the first letter of each line together.
Whom? R-I-Z-Z-I.
The general was a man who had spent his life deciphering codes and hidden messages. He instantly understood that the Pope, bound by his holy vows, could not speak openly, and was giving him a target to decipher. This was the spark he had been waiting for. When he left the chapel, he called his old, trusted team. He had only one instruction.
Silvio Rizzi. Reopen his file. I want you to track his every move, starting with his finances.
His third and final move was again aimed at Judge Rossi. He had to give him not just hope, but a path. The next day, the Pope's schedule included a brief address to a group of visiting students from the Rome Faculty of Law. It was the perfect opportunity. The speech was being recorded by the Vatican News Agency.
Future servants of law and justice, remember that your duty is not merely to apply laws, but to seek the truth.
Then he told the story of Susanna from the Old Testament.
An innocent woman condemned to death by the testimony of two false witnesses. But the young Daniel questioned them separately and asked a simple question: under which tree did you see the crime? They each named a different tree, and their web of lies was exposed. The lesson for us is this: the biggest lies are always hidden in the smallest details. When you seek the truth, never be afraid of the details.
That evening, Judge Rossi, sitting in despair in his home, was watching the Vatican News Bulletin. When he heard the Pope's speech, he felt the words pierce his heart directly. This could not be a coincidence. It was the second silent message sent to him. The biggest lies are always hidden in the smallest details. The final day of the trial had arrived. The courtroom was packed. Leo Falcone sat in the defendant's chair, exhausted but dignified. Judge Matteo Rossi's face was as pale as chalk. As he opened his mouth to read the prepared verdict, his eyes fell upon the small wooden scale on the edge of his bench. One pan was slightly heavier than the other. In that moment, the Pope's words echoed in his mind. The biggest lies are always hidden in the smallest details. He paused for a moment. Everyone held their breath. Judge Rossi pushed the prepared text aside.
I recall Mr. Moretti from the prosecution to the stand.
His voice ringing like steel through the courtroom. The prosecutor and Rizzi's lawyers looked at each other in shock. This was completely against procedure. Judge Rossi began to press on a tiny detail that no one had noticed before. He exposed the contradictions in time and place within the witnesses' testimonies, one by one. His questions were so sharp, so precise, that the perfect structure built on lies began to crumble. After an hour of cross-examination, one of the paid witnesses could no longer take the pressure.
Enough! It was all a lie. Rizzi paid us for it.
The courtroom instantly erupted into chaos. In the midst of the pandemonium, the courtroom doors swung open and General Gallo entered with his Carabinieri team.
Silvio Rizzi, you are under arrest for blackmail, obstruction of justice, and organized crime.
Everything was resolved within a few hours. Leo Falcone was freed. and Silvio Rizzi was heading where he belonged. Justice had found a way through the silence. A week later, Pope Leo was blessing the public during his weekly audience in St. Peter's Square. In the crowd was Judge Matteo Rossi, holding his daughter Sophia's hand tightly. Their eyes met. Not a single word was spoken between them. But that momentary gaze was more meaningful than the longest speech of gratitude. It was a thankful salute between two men who understood each other's silence. That evening, Cardinal Francesco came to the Pope's side.
I don't understand it, he said. Without speaking a word, without breaking a single law, how did you do it?
Pope Leo smiled. He looked out the window at the lit-up city of Rome.
Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones we inspire others to say. Francesco, our silence, when filled with faith, can say more than the loudest sermon. We only plant the seed. It is God's justice that makes it grow.
This was the story of how a pope, even when trapped in silence, could illuminate the path of justice. This was the story of the courage to do what is right in the most difficult moments and of the silent power of faith. This was the Pope's path. So, do you listen to the voice of your conscience, or do you prefer to listen to your logic as your duty requires? If you're curious about the challenges on the Pope's path, don't forget to follow the channel and like the video.